what's up guys, long time no see and things have changed. I am going to change my content into film orientated videos because film lately has become one of my passions because I've been watching Screen Junkies and also I just quite like film. So the old videos will be staying, but that's more for me to cringe at than you guys. But I am going to change up the content. We're doing reviews of films that I've seen in the cinemas recently or films that I've watched before that I really like my personal favourites. Hopefully you guys will like the change in content. I just thought it would be something different and something that I actually like, that I kind of want to speak out to. But today guys, I'm going to start off with a review, and this is of Dunkirk, the Christopher Nolan film 2017. So the first thing I would say, for people that have actually already watched it and haven't watched it in IMAX, or people who want to watch it but don't know if they should watch it in IMAX, I would say most definitely watch it in IMAX. I know it's a little bit more, but with Christopher Nolan, he complements IMAX, IMAX complements him. You've seen it with The Dark Knight, you've seen it with The Dark Knight Rises. He is perfect with IMAX. Straight off the bat, you start with action. You hear the gunshots, you're already immersed into the war, basically, and where they are. Yes, you do get a little context at the start with a little bit of text saying where you are, and the French, and with the English people waiting for the boats. But straight away, you all are already in the action, and you're on the edge of your seat from the get-go. And I think that's what I like about films, because you don't need to have the character development first. That kind of drags on a little bit. He got you straight into the action straight away, and you already felt you were in the film. And I know that sounds weird because you're not, but especially with IMAX, it heightens all of it, and you feel so immersed into the film already from the get-go that you're not bored already. You're enticed to see where it's going. You're enticed to see where the action is. You're not just going, oh, well now they're going to war yet. So after they grabbed your attention from the get-go, they can start kind of telling the story a little bit more, because you're already intrigued into, well, the soldiers anyway. You're already intrigued into those characters. You want to see where that boy goes after all of his friends have been gunned down. Spoiler alert, I'm sorry. But then they can start telling you the story, and they do, but they tell you three stories. They tell you the public, people on the land trying to help, then you have the Air Force, and then you have the actual soldiers on the beaches. Some would say though, with 3 films in one film, it does get a little bit confusing, and rightly so, because in some films you kind of go there for the journey of just one character. But with Dunkirk, they have an advantage, because you want to feel the journey of every single soldier, but you can't, but you do. And we go as a viewing audience because we have stories of our own from our great-grandfathers and our grandfathers of how they experienced war, and we go to watch it to see how they portray war. And I think with Dunkirk, you don't need a lot of character development. You don't need the, oh, I left my child at home, I left like my wife, because you kind of already have those sort of stories. But with Dunkirk, you have more the emotion and the then and now sort of feelings and the stories then. And with Christopher Nolan, he amazingly captured the emotion of every single character, and you felt for them because you knew these were actual real people that lived out these stories. These aren't just fairy tales, these are personal stories that someone once actually lived through. And I think that's where we get our connection already to the characters. We don't need to know why they're there, why they're at war. We know already that these were actual real people with real stories to tell and with real emotions. And I think with Christopher Nolan, he captured the emotion amazingly. He created an atmosphere that worked just amazing. You only had to hear 3 bars of music and you just knew straight away the emotion, or you knew the atmosphere. You knew, like with the Air Force people, you only saw really that much of their face, just their eyes. And I think even with their eyes you saw the relief, the pain, the stress, you saw everything, but such from a limited facial expression. And I think also with the script, they didn't need a lot of script, but still, you don't need words to express emotion. And I think Christopher Nolan knew that. And it's not like they're going to just sit down around a campfire going, I feel blah, 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 blah. Because that's not what they did. They're in action. They're on edge every single time. They can't just sit down and tell you how they're feeling. So why not show it? And I think Christopher Nolan did that. He allowed the characters and the music to give you that emotion instead of just scripts telling you how they feel. Because I think when people tell you how they feel, it kind of just feels forced on you. Like, I am feeling sad. And it's like, oh, but when you see it from their face and when you hear it from the music, it begins to really build up the atmosphere. And I think that's where he went really great. And I think that's why I connected personally with the characters, and that's why I was literally in tears for most of the film, because I knew every single second what they were feeling, and no shot was wasted. When they have like the little lock thing, they're showing the lock and you're like, some people go, well, why are you showing the lock? But then they show the boy's face and you go, he's contemplating whether to lock it or not. And you get that just from a single shot. And then later on, they develop on it, and you need those shots to tell you their thoughts. Now, I would say that the acting was superb across the board. How, even with the limited script, how they still conveyed the message of the emotion and everything through what they were saying, what they were feeling in their face, the actions, how they held themselves, everything. Their characterization was perfect. There was no fault. And even with the extras still, like, sometimes with films, you see the extras and they're not really in it. They're just like starstruck, or they're just sitting there bored out their mind, or they're just like, hi mom, sort of thing in the background. But no, every single extra, you felt it. You felt it from them. They weren't just sitting there, they were sitting there. They had that emotion in their face. And I think that's also what made the film so good, because no extra swayed your eyes. It kept you in that emotion and that atmosphere. It wasn't like somebody in the end of the row messing about that kind of made you go, what's he doing, the plonker? And then it takes you out of that atmosphere because you're thinking, oh, wow, that one, sort of thing. The extras don't let the film down. Now I'll try to focus on the characters that had a big role in it. I was actually quite surprised, I would say, and I never thought I would say this, but I actually really enjoyed Harry Styles as an actor. Now I thought he was going to be a bit boring, but that's because I didn't like him and I thought, oh no, he's just a singer. He should just stay a singer. But actually, his acting was amazing. The gravitas of emotion that he showed, you felt it from him. When that man didn't look at him at the end, you felt like angry with that man. Yes, you knew afterwards he was blind, but even though Harry Styles' character didn't know he was blind, you still felt sorry for him. And when he was having a go of, oh, that man didn't even look us in the eye, even though we knew that he was blind, we still felt that pathos and that sadness for Harry's character, because you understood why he would be so disappointed and how hurt he would feel that he just went over to a different country fighting for our country and you couldn't even bear to look at him. He could have died, but you still couldn't bear to look at him. And I think with that, you already felt so bad for him regardless of what you knew about the other man being blind. Now the next people I want to talk about is the people on the boat. Now I think they're superb actors and they have more script, I would say, than the others, so you kind of got more development from them, but I still think that their characters were very good regardless if they had big script or like little script. I don't know their character names and I don't know their actor names, so I'm sorry about that. So I'm just going to go off hair colour and appearance. So the blonde one, straight off, I kind of thought he was like the Jack of the Lad, and I thought he was going to take the mick out of the person with the brown hair. But then as soon as something bad happened with the brown haired person, I don't want to kind of spoil it for you, but I kind of have to spoil it a little bit, so spoilers ahead. But when the brown haired boy goes blind, and you feel that like, oh no. And the brown haired boy is telling the story about how he wanted his dad to see him on the paper and see he can achieve things. You felt emotion from both the characters, and I was crying so much with them. And especially with the one scene, again, I think I've spoke about this, about the lock. You go, why are you looking at the lock? And then you see this blonde guy's face, and you straight away see that he's contemplating whether to close that door or leave it open. And you kind of feel that like thought in your head going, shall I, shan't I, shall I, shan't I? And it's like, you're just going, well, is he, well, is he, well, is he? And then he doesn't. And then you see the aftermath of that. You see his guilt in his face. And then you have the Navy man, the man that's actually running the boat, and you see how he wants to do good for his country, how he fought in the war before, I think, if I can remember rightly. He fought in the war, and you can see how he understood what they were feeling. And you saw him with the snipers and stuff. You knew that he knew what he was doing, and you felt sort of he was doing something patriotic for his country. He couldn't go out and fight, but he would go and risk his life still to collect those soldiers off the water. And I think it was amazing how he showed control and calm, and how you kind of believe that he knew what he was doing at that point. And then you have the man that was a PTSD soldier, if I can't say it right, I'm so sorry if I haven't, but he had shell shock, and you believe that. And he was actually the character from Batman Begins. He was Scarecrow, and I recognised him as an actor, and I kind of thought, oh, him. I've seen him in different things, and I thought he was good, but in this, he was brilliant. You understood that he was vulnerable, and he felt vulnerable at that time. Every time a bomb was dropped, he felt that in his body, and I think he conveyed it so well that I think with the people on the boat, they kind of you kind of believe their characters more, regardless of them not being a soldier. They didn't have to be a soldier, but you still felt that connection to them, and you still felt, yeah, they're doing something for their country. Now, next I'm going on to the Air Force character. Now, it was Tom Hardy. I can't say his last name. But I was quite like, oh, hello. Kind of have a little bit of a crush on him, I would have to say. But I was quite disappointed when you just saw that much of his face. But regardless of all of that, his character was, and the other Air Force man, it was amazing. And I think like how they showed the emotion just from such a limited sort of script and from face or experience, because the other soldiers, they had their full face and their body to show you their emotion as well, but with them they just had their eyes and a few sort of words to say. And I think they still, and probably just like at the same peak, they showed the same emotion, and they conveyed it to the characters of what they were feeling at that time. And I think at the end I was like in tears. I won't spoil it. I really want to say why I enjoyed it, but I don't want to spoil it for people. But at the end, Tom Hardy's character, I was on the edge of my seat, and I was nearly in tears with his character. His character nearly pushed me on the edge, because you're going, oh my god, is he going to survive? Is he going to survive? And you saw him just cruising, and he's going out of gas, and you're like, oh my god, is he going to crash in the water? And you saw other people like on the beaches thinking exactly the same thing as you, and you're going, yeah, they don't know what's happening up there. We kind of do, but in a way they still do know what's happening in there, because they know something's going wrong. They don't know what, but they're just as scared as we are for that character. And I think Tom Hardy's character, even though it kind of ended on a weird note, and I was kind of unsure what happened with his character, I still felt that I kind of went on that journey with him. Now, I'm sorry it's dragging on a little bit. If you're still here watching, thank you so much. I know that is like about 20 minutes in. I am so sorry. But I just have so much to say about this film, and I really want to just talk about it. So I'm going to go back and start talking to it. But thank you for staying this long. Now I'm just going to say little details and little things that I liked about it, beginning with the filter. Now I feel there was a filter on the actual film itself, because it seemed very rustic and not modern, and you kind of felt like you were watching it in that era. Even though I was sitting in the cinema watching it on an IMAX screen, you still felt like it was that kind of rustic old film. It wasn't in black and white, but it kind of had that dark, dingy sort of filter that kind of made it feel like an old rustic film, and also complemented the atmosphere being made, because it wasn't big and bright and jolly. It was dark and dull, and the colours that they used as well, that also showed the emotion. There was no white, there was no crisp to it. It was dull and it was bleak and it was dark, and it kind of showed and also symbolised the feelings inside. Now I would say some of the action bits and some of the shots, especially with the aeroplanes, were perfectly done. The aeroplane bit was amazing. It was very fast paced, and the pacing of the film was very mishmash, but it worked for different types of scenes. Because you have 3 different stories and you flick between different ones, they need a different pacing, and sometimes it can feel a bit whoa like that, but because you had different stories, it kind of complemented the stories with that pace. And especially there was this one scene, and it was the oil. Now I don't want to spoil it for you, so if you don't want to see it, flick over. But it was there with oil, and there was these men covered in oil, and this bomb got dropped and it just lit up in flames, and you heard people screaming, and that kind of sent me a little bit over the edge as well. I was very much emotional in this film, and I think how he portrayed it and showed, like, he didn't like paint colour and make it all pretty. He didn't just go, oh, here's a fire, people may have died, but we won't show you that bit. They showed us this bit, and that's what I liked about this film. It focused on the actual war itself. It focused a little bit on the characters, but on the war. It had the bombs dropping, it had the things being tornadoed, it had people on rafts, it had people on boats that can't be saved, it had just people dying and scrambling for their lives. And with that oil scene in particular, it showed you that this was real. This isn't some little film that kind of shows something, but it's all light-hearted and not so grim. This showed you every single corner of the war, and I think that's why it was such a good film, because it didn't pussyfoot around the truth. It gave you what happened. It gave you the oil, it gave you the boats being sinked, it gave you the bombs dropping, it gave you people crashing into the water, exploding and dying. And even though that sounds a bit scary and a bit, oh, why would they show that? They showed it because they were trying to show a message that this was war, this is what it's like. And I think it's also a message for today as well, of this is what we could go back to, but also it could be even worse because we have nuclear war. We've seen how bad it can be. Why would we want to go back? And I think because they showed such a strong image and impression of war, it shocked us into going, that could be us one day because of how the world's going. Why do we want to see men having to go out and fight and survive? Why do we want to see people risking their lives to save others? Why do we want that? And I think that's what I took away from the film, regardless of also about this was actual people, this was actual stories. It was also how we could go back to being in a war-struck sort of world, basically. Now, the last thing I would say about the film is the ending. I think it ended on such a lovely note, even though with the Tom Hardy aeroplane bit, I was a little bit left kind of going, well, what's happened? Why would he do this? The actual ending with the main soldiers I thought was beautiful, and also with the people on the boat. There was one particular line where the Air Force man, he was already on the boat and he came off the boat, and the man said, one of the soldiers went, where were you when we needed you? And the old Navy man turned around to him and went, those kids know where you where you were, they know what you've been through. And I think that's the thing, not everyone knew what everyone been through. And the soldier, yes, he didn't know that the Air Force man was nearly at death's door. We knew what happened. It doesn't care what they know, we knew what they've been through. And I think that was a lovely note to it, and sort of a homage to people that had their stories not fully told and were labelled a coward, but people didn't actually know the full story to what has happened to them. And then also there was another part with the newspaper with the blonde hair boy, and he went over, oh, this is the bit that got me, went over and handed in this thing into a newspaper thing. Now personally I thought it was to his father to say, look, your son has died, but it was actually, we saw in the end that he had a little piece of the note in the newspaper. Now, as you heard before, the boy and him were talking about how he wanted his dad to see that he achieved something in life, and that kind of beautifully was a homage to what that boy had been through. And I think that kind of tied in that story nicely, that he got what he wanted. Yes, he died to finally have his dad notice what he'd done, but he died a hero of Dunkirk, and that's what it said as a news headline. Also, the last thing I liked was when they were on the train and they were reading the newspaper, and they had that emotion shown, and they were reading it out, and it said something about how they were cowards almost, and it was something about Winston Churchill. I can't recite it word for word, but they were reading it, and then all of a sudden it said something positive about hope and stuff. And then you just saw these people celebrating, coming up to the train, handing out drinks, and you just saw that, yeah, regardless of how people may perceive them to be cowards, some people actually genuinely know what they've been through and how they were almost left for dead. And then you had the man saying, I'm going to stay here for the French people, the captain, and I thought that was beautiful as well. And he just went like that to one of his sort of, I don't know what it's called, but like helpers, and he stayed there, and you showed that, yeah, we as a world, we are united, we should help people. And he stayed, even though he's English, he stayed for those French soldiers, and he's gonna wait for them to be off the beaches too. And I think all around the stories, even though there were 3 stories, they all linked in nicely to the end, because they all linked in and they all had pretty much the same ending, except for Tom Hardy's, I would say. It was beautiful film, and I was left crying and in tears at the end, and I didn't know what to do. But it's such an amazing experience. It's a very, very good film, and I think it's already one of my top 10 films that I've ever watched, and I've only watched it once, but it was such an experience, and I think you need to watch it in a theatre. And how they marketed it was perfect, because you do need to see it in a cinema, and I would say see it in IMAX if you can. I know it's a lot more money, but it's so worth the experience. But anyway guys, that's where I'm leaving my review. I'm sorry I kind of rambled, it was my first one, and I know it's a little bit long, and I'm so sorry for that. But if you stayed till the end, thank you so much. Can you please, if you want to, leave me some feedback in the comments, and some film suggestions that you want me to do, and I will get on to them as a jiffy, because I'm watching loads of films that I will do reviews on my top 10s, on my thoughts on. I'm watching a whole range of classic films, so I just want to hear what you guys think of it. So leave a like, leave a comment, leave a subscribe. Hope you like this. Sorry it dragged on guys, but I will see you soon for another review.